Hey, Sarah.
Hello, Steff. We've got a different background today.
Yeah, no, another just area of my home. We are currently in the kind of lounge kitchen, although more closer to the kitchen. We've got a big massive window behind you there. So yeah, we are in the kitchen and we are talking today about expectations or managing expectations as a bodybuilder, about bodybuilding, a little bit about pre and post show expectations as well and how we manage them. And we were just talking about it, weren't we, before, about we were just going to touch on pre and post show and how to manage expectations there, but we actually thought, how do you go about managing expectations as a bodybuilder?
Yeah.
As a topic, it's actually, there's tons there, isn't there?
Yeah, because even like thinking back to when I first started my journey to now, there's so many different phases as a bodybuilder, from, starting out to competing for the first time and then competing multiple times, whether you go into the pro league, and then managing your expectations with competing, but also how that fits into your life and your relationships, because it's just massive. Like, it's such a shift. If you're going to stick to this for years,
yeah,
we've both had very pivotal changes in our lives personally, as well as within the community and what we're doing as bodybuilders. So there's so much to touch on. And I think that sometimes if you think about managing expectations, it's like, it seems like it's quite a small subject in regards to, you want to set yourself up for success, don't set yourself up for failure, but there's so much more to it, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And like, if I was to sort of say to anybody, like if I take sort of one of my consult calls, for example, where I've got a newbie who's like, I really want to compete, I really want to start bodybuilding properly. I've been training for maybe 6 to 10 years or maybe a little bit less. I really love the training and I want to take it to this new place. The first thing I always say to people is, it's not an overnight thing. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And even though marathon makes it sound a bit arduous, I mean that in the sense that it's a long, positive journey to get, to that place you want to be, but not to expect like you do your first prep and bang, you're a pro, or bang, you're this, or, like you're suddenly like exploded into, 20 kilos more muscle in 1 year. It's not like that.
Even the muscle gain, like I still have this with whether it's Gen Pop or bodybuilders, about how much muscle you can gain. And I always try and use an analogy on myself, so I can, because I know, I've felt it, I've done it. Mm-hmm. We're talking like throughout a whole off season and then going into a prep, you might retain, like 2 pounds worth of muscle.
Yeah.
And it's like, the first off season into a prep is probably your best one, because you're suddenly training properly and it's structured and hopefully you've got a coach and what have you. But when people are like, oh, well, if I do that, I'm going to put on loads of muscle. I'm like, let me just give you a little bit of an insight into my experience with that. It's like, over the period of time of competing. So we've said about before, your stage weight will get more, but you'll look better because you've got more muscle the more you compete. But it's not that much more really when you consider how many years and how many off seasons you put in.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you're actually less weight on stage as you get more experience because you're bringing a better condition, and you're losing the fat, but the muscle that you might have gained, is in essence maybe the same weight as the fat that you've lost from do you know what I mean? So relative to sort of, well, there's so many variables in that. Your genetic potential to grow tissue, your training intensity, the application to consistency through long periods of off season, all of these things will determine how much tissue you will accrue across an off season. But you're right, you may start, I don't know, 1 year, say 52 kilos, and then by year 6 you're maybe 53.8 kilos. I mean, that's crazy. A pound or two of muscle gain across a few years, like from a natural perspective, is realistic. You're not going to be gaining kilos and kilos of muscle tissue. You're just not going to do that. Considering assistance in there, anabolic steroids, that's a different conversation, and the rate of which you may grow will be different as well. But yeah, I mean, that's from
the long haul.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, from the get-go, you've got to expect, you can't expect to just, as I say, you have to do the work. to gain the results of the tissue over time. So yeah, massive expectation. Don't think that you're just going to explode very quickly.
And I think as well, it's also worth mentioning, you know, when you do go into a prep, you do lose a certain amount of muscle because you're going into a stage lean condition. You're not just getting leaner. There's a lot more out there now to promote longer preps, especially for naturals. And I know you do the same, but a lot of podcasts and things that I've heard and, you know, through different research and what have you, having the longer preps, there's, you know, potential to retain more muscle tissue as you diet, rather than a harsh diet where you're going to potentially lose more. But there's not, you know, huge amounts in it, is there? But you want to keep as much muscle as you can, basically.
Yeah, 100%. I just did a podcast actually about natural competitors, particularly females, and sort of the application to dieting process. And the aim of the game is, time is your biggest commodity. The longer the prep, the slower the fat loss, the higher you can keep food, and the more muscle retention you will have. There is obviously a percentage of tissue loss. Actually, Andrew has done some really cool studies on natural bodybuilding populations, both male and female, to show you the percentage of muscle tissue loss at certain points of a dieting phase, which is really cool. Link for people who want to go see that. Yeah, I mean, if you crash diet in a short period of time to try and get a whole ton of fat off, you're going to lose more tissue than somebody who maybe takes, you know, a much longer prep, a slower rate of fat loss, and focusing again, continuing to train at a level of intensity, because they've just got more, they can eat more food in the diet to do that, so they retain more tissue as they go through the process. So yeah, I mean, that's another thing as well, is expectations of the length of time of a dieting phase in a contest prep. It's not, you know, again, I spoke about this in the last, the natural prep pod I did as well, which is, I've got friends who are assisted competitors. I've got a lot of friends who are natural competitors as well. And you usually take two different sorts of preps. If you've got the use of anabolics in there, your preps can be shorter, because you can, well, you can train a lot harder, you can do a lot more, and you're not going to lose the tissue that somebody who maybe a natural is, and you have to do a lot of a longer prep for being a natural to get into the condition. So a 12-week over here with potential assistance is like a 40-week over here for a natural. So there's a real difference there in terms of application to the contest prep, but that's an expectational thing as well.
Yeah, and where you touched on there with strength going into a prep, like so many people always say to me, oh, you know, as soon as you're in a prep, you must just lose loads of strength. And I bet you're exactly the same. When I go into a prep, I'm like, my intention is to lift this amount of weight that I'm currently on at the height of my off season for as long as possible, unless it becomes, you know, yes, you might need a bit more help from a spotter, or you might have to reduce the reps or slightly tailor it, but I'm not letting that go unless I have to, you know.
100%. And actually, really, you know, out of all of the people that I've worked with, but also from, again, with Andrew's research, really, it's only in the very last phase of in the last part of a dieting phase is when you should be starting to notice that starting to feel weaker and a bit of, you know, strength drop.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the majority of that is down to just the fatigue. You may have been on a long prep, the body's been put through a lot, you're now probably at your lower levels of body fat, the body's telling yourself to shut down other parts of other activity, like your other NEAT activity, to try and preserve energy stores to be able to, you know, do what you do on a daily basis. So the body at that point is telling you to shut down and preserve energy, which is including energy whilst you're training, which is probably why things are going to start dropping off a wee bit. So, and you're in a more fragile state. The body doesn't like being really low body fat levels. It's going to just sit there and go, please don't do anything. I want to just hold on to this tiny little bit of, you know, energy that I have left.
A little bit of skin. Me and Sophie always say, we're like, okay, so we've hit that Ethiopian stage where we're literally, you know, each meal, it's like you hoover it up and there's nothing going in. You just feel really, really small and frail, and you just don't want to do anything extra. Yeah,
because at that point, like, you're flat. Your, you know, bodybuilding pursuit, as negative as this sounds, is controlled starvation almost, to get you to a point where you are minimal body fat, holding on to the tissue and getting yourself to a point where you're so lean, you're ready to fill out to showcase what you're doing. So by that point, yeah, you are really depleted, and hormonally you're suppressed.
Yep.
Fatigue is really high. General day-to-day chores will become more arduous, things like that. So again, from an expectation point of view, guys, like, it is and this comes around to behaviors around it. It is as hard as you make it. You've got to be prepared to know that this is not an everyday pursuit. Not everybody can do bodybuilding. They can't. I don't care. Like, some people say everybody can do this. I disagree completely. Some people can't stick the monotony of it, because, and this is another thing I say to people, are you prepared, potentially prepared for the next 20, 30 weeks to be pretty much eating the same things every day, training the same time every day, going to bed the same time every day, waking up the same time every day, taking your supplements, drinking this amount of water, saying potentially no to social events, or if you are doing social events, being okay with it and still remaining upbeat and positive, but you may just have to take your own food with you. These are all things you've got to be prepared for, because if you're not, and you're not willing to kind of accept this is part of what is expected, really, to get to doing this properly, if you wanted to do it properly, then it might not be the right thing for you.
Yeah, and I think if you go into it with that, and like with the weight training, if you go into a prep and expect your best, but also expect that you can potentially, lift a bit more than you thought you would be able to going into a prep, so you can continue on that weight, rather than thinking from the bat, going into a prep thinking, right, first week into prep, I'm dropping how much I'm lifting just because I've gone into prep and I don't want to use too much energy. Whereas if you go into it and expect the best from yourself and expect that you can maintain the level of weight training that you have, I personally, that was a shift in my mindset, as it were, into how I feel about each prep and how hard I can train. And again, like you say, if you can expect it's going to be tough, I'm doing this because it's my choice, which we've spoken about before in previous pods. Why are you doing it? Can you put up with that routine? And accepting it, rather than going into a prep like, oh God, I've got to go into this prep, I really don't want to, but it's the wrong reasons, isn't it?
100%. And if you go into it with that mindset from the offset, I'm telling you now, it's going to be hell for you. It's going to be so hard. If you go in being like, oh my God, what I've chosen to do is so hard, but I'm just doing it, but it's really difficult, and everything's like, it's stopping me from doing this, it's stopping me from eating that. These kinds of thought processes, if they are in there, honestly, you're going to make it so challenging for yourself. And that's not to say that those things won't creep up from time to time, even in the most prepared bodybuilder in the world. They will every now and again, but it's how you react to those thought processes are going to make this either a personally rewarding challenge of a journey, or, to be honest, a total slog. And what would be the point? Like, because if you're just going to hate on yourself every day for the reasons why you can't do this or can't do that, then you've not got your why set straight, like, to begin with.
Yeah. And I also encourage, people that are listening that are in a prep or going into a prep or considering it, lean into the periods of time where you do feel quite fatigued. And when I do, like, it's a really weird way to look at it, but this last prep I had, like, there was certainly, as we know, getting close to the show, you're getting fatigued and you go a little bit prep brain. And when I lean into it and like laugh at myself for having prep brain, and I've put the TV remote in the fridge and I'm like, what am I doing? But then I laugh at myself and I like, float around and stuff. And it makes it, a little bit fun as well, rather than being like, I feel really fatigued, I feel like shit.
Yeah, 100%.
Because if you tell yourself, I feel like shit, you also, your mentality is to go into that. And then you unfortunately risk, going to that almost victim mode of everyone should feel what I'm feeling. I feel like, really horrendous. I've got no energy. I'm doing all of this. Why aren't all of these people feeling it? Then you've got relationships that are affected as well. And your whole aura is not right.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you've got to keep things into perspective. When you make a choice to do like a contest prep, which is a physical challenge and a mental challenge, But remember, you're doing this to get upstage and build your confidence and maybe, you know, showcase your hard work. I think we all go in, I think nowadays particularly, a lot of people, even just total first timers, will go into this with a heavy, heavy set of pressure on themselves because they're so visually stimulated now by what we see on socials, right? So I get a lot of people come to me and they're like, I want to do a prep. I follow this person, somebody I really admire, I want to look like that. And already they've set like their bar, like here, you know what I mean? And it's an unrealistic place to start from. And I think people are often going into the contest prep phase, maybe their first or second one, thinking, I need to look like this IFBB pro who's potentially, by the way, not natural, has been doing this for a very long time. And I don't mean not natural in a derogatory way. I mean it in the sense that it's not a realistic perception of where you should be in your first or second season, for example.
And so, genetics as well. And
and so that in itself, you have to almost unpick that before you begin, because you have to set clear expectations of where is my body at now? Mm-hmm. What can I expect to achieve in my first or second year? And you know what? If I understand that from the get-go, then I'm going to really enjoy it, because then I can go, well, I'm not going to look like that IFBB pro in this first or second year, but that's okay because I'm starting, and eventually one day I'll get there. And I mean, I had a check-in with one of my girls this week who's going in for her first show season next year. Shout out to Alex Wren. She's amazing. Go check her out. She's so good. She's got great physique. We're building her structure out at the moment. And I pulled up on the screen in our check-in a picture of me, and literally it was 2 weeks before my first show, and then 2 weeks out of my pro season 2019.
I love your transformation.
And I said to her, I was like, look at this. Because she was talking about some people in her gym who are lifting, 6 plates aside on a hack squat and XYZ. And I was trying to give her an example of, this is the realistic pattern. But sometimes you can get lost when you're looking at these people and think, why don't I look like that? Because you're not there yet. And it's okay, because you're starting that journey and you're going to get there. But we have to be clear on the journey and the milestones we can get to at certain points.
Yeah. And the valid point there is having a coach, like we always say, we can't say it enough. Like, I legit don't know where I'd be right now if I didn't have Stephen, because when I first met him, I just had this such warped idea of what you needed to do and put into bodybuilding to be accepted as a bodybuilder.
Yes.
And it's not like, at the moment I'm practicing like intuitive eating, and I'm similar to what you and Andrew do after a show, where you don't train for like a month and then you go back into it. So I'm doing a similar thing, which Stephen wants me to try. And it's the first time I've been able to really delve into intuitive eating and not freak out. And, I'm not by any means eating loads of shit, and I'm keeping my protein up and all those things that we would do. But it's the first time I've been able to lean into it properly and not feel guilty for like not tracking every single thing I eat and drink.
Yeah.
But it's taken, that's like 7 years to be able to accept having, more than a week of intuitive eating.
And that's actually a really good point, Sarah. And I think that ties into an initial expectation as well with, and I don't know what your experience was like of this, but certainly it was for me, that your perception of things will change when you start your bodybuilding journey. 2 things. Your perception of your own physique and what you see in the mirror is going to change, and the perception of how you behave around foods is going to change, massively. And people don't realize this, because you might come from a totally normal pattern of eating, totally normal. You just get up, eat what you like, maintain a pretty steady weight, go out one day, have a cupcake in a Starbucks, go out on a Saturday, have a meal out, and never think about it, right? You might never have to think about that. When you start competing, you learn how to weigh things, how to see what portion sizes look like. You learn very quickly your protein must have a source of carbs, your carbs must have a source of fat, and you start to see this pattern. So whenever you go out now, you look at your plate and it's like you subconsciously just go, that's protein, that's carbs, that's fats, that's this. You don't even think about it, but that's what we do.
You don't think about taste half the time.
No, exactly. And you know, you might never have thought about these things before, but you learn these behaviors when you become a bodybuilder, because you have to start weighing and knowing what you're putting in your body. So then when you reverse out, like you've just said here, where you're starting to have that kind of, I mean, obviously I know you do a more macro-based approach anyway, like a more kind of intuitive approach anyway, but you're now coming back to the point where you're reminding yourself what balance looks like what
Pretty weird.
eating normally feels like. And you have to regain that feeling. And for anybody who's about to start this, that's another expectation you have, that you've got to be pretty strong to know that once you're in the competitive season, you're competing, but then once you're out of it, you need to come back to some normality with the food. Otherwise, patterns of potential negative behaviors around food, dysmorphic behaviors around how you look, all these sorts of things could start to come in. And that's something you've got to really, really be careful with, because it happens all the time.
When you first start your journey as a bodybuilder, even like you say, weighing things, etc. And earlier you said about it's basically controlled starvation, which it is when you get into a stage prep. It's also disordered behaviors around food. Like, I think it would be silly of us to think that it's not, you know, like a controlled disordered eating pattern. And you know, when you look at it, we're set by times, measurements, macros, how we want to optimize our nutrition. It is so intense. And like I spoke to Stephen earlier, and I was like, oh my God, like for 7 years I've had this intensity and I've put everything into this, and I'm now at a point where I'm able to look at it very differently, and what, you know, how I look at myself and how I guess rate myself. Because before it would be like, if I haven't tracked today, then I'm not a bodybuilder, I'm not an athlete. I don't deserve to be called that, because well, I haven't tracked my food, so I don't know what I've eaten. But actually I know so well, like you said before, when you look at a potato, you're like, okay, so that's about 40 grams of carbs there, and then if I had a knob of butter, 5 to 6 grams of fat, and you know, we joke about it, but it is like, I would look at a load of stuff and I'd think, okay, well, that's that based, so that's going to be less fat, and I've already had some fat today, so I'll have, and then I'm eating it, I'm thinking, I don't even know if I like the flavor of this.
I know, exactly.
But
it's so, I mean, it is. And it's, you know what, part of that's really positive, because you've educated yourself actually on nutritional properties of foods, right? But then the other part, and it's still positive if you've got control over that, because then post show or post season, or when you know, it takes a wee while to get there, but eventually, and I've got a few girls and guys in the off season at the moment, we get to a point where body weight's pretty steady, things are pretty nice, and actually flexibility becomes quite normal and they're comfortable with that. But it takes a bit to get there. And then you can have the flip side where, and I've got clients in this situation as well, where they may have periods of binge eating because they've not had these foods for so long. They've never actually taught themselves how to control themselves properly, because they've never been in this situation before after such a long period of restrictive eating. And then suddenly they notice how unhappy this is making them feel. And there's a whole load of psychological things that come with that. And that can be quite challenging, because they're treating themselves with a lot of guilt and upset. And there's a lot of things there that have to kind of be unpicked. And so that's essentially, as well, coaching wise, you need somebody or people around you. And this will link probably into something I wanted to ask you. You need people around you to know what you're doing, so that they can see you at all different stages of this, pre the contest prep, during the contest prep, and help you post the contest prep. And so, I mean, I don't know about you, Sarah, but would you agree, because I do this now, that it's important to let people know that you're doing a contest prep or a bodybuild, or you're going into this bodybuilding journey, so that people can help you with it?
Yeah, so when we have touched on this before, I remember, because we were laughing when I first did my bodybuilding prep, and you said you worked in an office, and I got part of my job's in an office, and I used to think, well, I don't really need to tell anyone, I can just be like a secret squirrel. And it made it so much bloody harder.
Much harder.
Like, the only people that knew about it was like my mum, my really close people, family, really,
Yeah.
even friends, I'd be like, oh, right, if I'm meeting them at that time, what I'll do is I take my Tupperware and I eat it about 15 minutes before, and then I can, blah, blah, blah. And it becomes so stressful.
Oh, so stressful. I remember going and sitting in cars and eating just so that people didn't fucking say anything to me. Excuse me for my French, but
Yeah, but it does get to you.
I remember being in a meeting, in a work meeting, with a whole ton of colleagues, different people there that were coming for business advice, etc. And actually thinking, I'm just going to go to the bathroom, and eating my chicken and rice meal really quickly in the bathroom, so not to feel the embarrassment that I felt at the time of sitting in front of these people and pulling out my Tupperware. That's actually, like, legitimately, I would say, what happens with a lot of people.
To avoid questioning.
And something I always say to people when they start this is, you're going to experience the cynicism of people who don't understand what you're doing, but B, what you're doing makes them feel uncomfortable about themselves.
Yeah. And what we're going to realize is that people sometimes don't want to understand. It's a superficial. I had this conversation with someone the other day. Some people say to me, how are you getting on with your bodybuilding? And I say, yeah, really good. And they walk off. So
Yeah.
that's a superficial, like, I want to sort of be affiliated with a bodybuilder. I'll ask her how she is now and then. Don't actually care. Whereas some people, they look me in the eye and they're like, how are you feeling?
Yeah, totally.
You know, how far out are you? How's your body feeling? And I'm like, I can talk to you for hours about this if you want me to. And when you see a genuine interest, it's almost like it takes you aback sometimes, because people don't really care that much. And I think in regards to managing expectations, don't expect people to care what you're doing. And I don't mean that in a horrible way, you know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And like, other side of that as well is, don't be surprised if some people that you don't even really know as well feel kind of, they can just deliver criticism about it. And they might try and
throw away comments.
Or they might try and offer you some advice of why you shouldn't do what you're doing, you know. And you'll get this, like, expect people to kind of stick their oar in.
Yeah.
Because they do.
Are you eating?
Yeah. Are you eating? Like, is everything okay? You're getting very thin, you know, these sorts of things. Like, you know, but I always sort of say to people, like females particularly, and I'm sure we've all been there, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners have as well, of the comments you get in the gym of, oh, I really wouldn't like to look like her, or she's too muscly, or she's that, why would you want to like train like a man, or is that all you're really going to eat? You know, all of these sorts of things. Like, these are all what I kind of almost call like in between the line insults. You know, they're kind of those sorts of shitty insults that people don't say to your face, but kind of say it in a way to make you feel crap. Yeah. And don't let it deter you, is what I would say on that front. Rather, consider like why they might say that, because it's a reflection of them, their selves and their own insecurities. And just keep moving towards your goals, because you can, whenever you do anything, like if I don't know, if my favorite thing to do was knitting, or I like rowing a boat every second weekend, or I don't know, whatever you're into, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're always going to have a band of people that are like, what's wrong with that person?
And when you were saying there about, you know, when people are like, oh, I don't want to be that muscly, it's like when Arnold always says, doesn't he? You're never going to be, so don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
And, you know, it's so refreshing when you do meet people that are on the way. This is why in bodybuilding, I feel, and it's probably the same with all sports, when you get those connections where you're like-minded people and you just get it, you know, especially for us females that we want to train hard, you know, not all bodybuilding females want to train hard.
No, not at all. And there's an intensity level for everybody. And there's also a vibe you give off whilst you're training or whilst you're doing your thing as well. Like, if you want to be that more masculine, like aggressive kind of trainer, do your thing, enjoy it, have fun with it. Like, if you want to be more of the gym bunny wearing your like Gymshark hot pants and your little top and you're doing your thing, do it, just go for it. Like, people get so concerned about the you know,
everyone else,
others, the acceptance of others. And actually the reality is, until you accept yourself, you'll never like allow those things to brush off your shoulder. That's the thing. Because a lot of people who I find struggle with accepting who they are and what they love to do tend to take in these things quite critically. Whereas a lot of the time we have to kind of go, no, do you know what? Like, training makes me feel strong. It makes me feel empowered. I love going to the gym because of this. A byproduct of my enjoyment of training is competing. I go into the gym, I train hard, and then every now and again I set myself this crazy goal, which everyone thinks is crazy, and I don't care because I love it. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of almost go down that route of understanding that not everyone's going to like what you do. That's okay. You don't have to change people's minds, but you do have to remember what you allow in will affect you, and what you deflect out, you don't care. It doesn't matter, you know? So things like that.
You can reflect that in your, like, I call it my tribe. Like, if you're a female that likes to train really hard, and you know, you go in with your stringer vest on and your shorts and your Converse, and you know, I really love that vibe. Like, I like it being a bit more, you know, I like the gyms that are in warehouses, and so consequently my people that I train with, when I'm or normally on my own, but if I do train with people, it's with people that train pretty much the same sort of vibe, and you then really feed off each other, and you get this organic energy, and you know, infuse each other without even having to say anything, and it's just it's so cool, isn't it, when you can find that?
I love that energy.
Literally.
I'm going to give a little shout out to my girl Gigi in Leeds, who was my training partner for so long, and I miss her to pieces. But she was that total energy partner as well. Like, when you find someone you can train with, you go in and it's just,
it's so sick. Like,
it's so fun, you know?
Yeah. And you're training for like sometimes 2 or 2.5 hours just because you're loving it. You're just loving life. You know, say it's a Saturday and you're off work or whatever, and you look at the time, you think, bro, yeah, it's been 2 hours. And actually, sometimes that's a bit of a relief from them. It can get not mundane, but when you're doing the same training plan on your own, week in, week out, having a session where you know, you're a bit more, you say, oh, like, you take the reins, we're just train, I need to train legs, can you lead the session? It's like, this is so cool.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. Yeah. So I mean, those sorts of things around people around you, setting expectations there is massive. Have people who know why you're doing this, lean on the people that support you. Don't feel scared to open up to those people, because you'll need them. Find people like in the industry, like, you know, me and Sarah, obviously we talk about this stuff all the time. Find people to talk to about it, because your normies, and we've spoken about this before, like your normal friends, they'll be no doubt support you, but they just won't get it. So like, they'll lead you to over there, but be like, how's it going? Is it going good? Cool, that's fine. Right, moving on. So
you want a slice of pizza? No, it's cool. Oh, and it's like, it's so funny because there's so many, like, I find it really cute now. Like, I get friends that will be like, well, surely we could have like a kebab because it's chicken sheesh, so there's nothing on that. And you're like, oh, it's so cute. Like, rather than being like, how dare she suggest a kebab? Like, it's a cool thing. And it's trying to, if you can just be transparent, basically.
Be transparent. And you said something earlier, which I think is setting mood and your mindset towards the prep prior to doing it.
Yeah.
And this relates to pre and post as well. Everything comes down to psychology. How you see and perceive this journey is going to determine how you enjoy it. Like, and you're not going to be perfect all the time. Of course not. You're going to have days where you hate it, because, you know, you have ups and downs with everything. You know, one day
your body is struggling at times.
You might wake up and just have a shit day, and then you've had a shit session and you've gone home and be like, ugh, that was so crap. But that doesn't mean it's going to, it doesn't mean like it's going to be like that all the time. And it's interesting when you go into a gym landscape, and I've talked about this on check-ins with people before, just before you even start training, right? Look around the gym and you will spot characters, right? You will spot the person over there who is training smart, probably got good intention. You'll probably see that person's not messing about between his sessions or her sessions. They're not on their phone. They're maybe doing their sessions their exercises quite close together. So maybe their intensity is good. They're focused, they're energized, they're on it. You'll see that person, right?
Yeah.
You'll see the other person on the other side of the gym who is not really that bothered, maybe just kind of wondering. Yeah, wandering about, maybe doing one exercise of one thing, then sitting on his phone or her phone for a bit, then getting up, maybe meandering somewhere else, and is just totally lacking in focus and maybe doesn't have a goal at all.
Yeah.
You'll then see, maybe if you're in a bodybuilding gym, I always see sort of talk about the different bodybuilding characters. You've got the stereotypical bloke or girl who does up. They're like they look like they'll literally kill somebody.
Die hard.
Everything looks like an effort. But they're lifting really heavy. Everything's aggressive and like, woe is me. That's how I see it anyway. I see it as, no, they're not humble. They're just really aggressive. They're really in that zone, and that's the way they like to do it. And so that's that. And then you'll see the opposites, you know, a bodybuilder who's maybe really what I call kind of arrogant or egotistical, is checking themselves out like all the time. Between the
like every opportunity.
Yeah, every single opportunity, just flexing the mirror, looking at himself in the mirror or herself in the mirror, and just you'll see all these different characters, right? And when you start to analyze it from the outset, you can just sort of understand the population of people that you're in and decide kind of where you sit in all of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing in the gym? What personality are you in the gym? What do you want to be in the gym? Like, what's your whole gym thing about? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that comes down to the prep as well, because I see a lot of people start a prep one way and will follow one of those stereotypes very quickly, or start a prep. Like, you've got to have a clear understanding of who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and then go in with purpose. And yeah, just some thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely transfers into off season as well, you know, and reversing out of a competition.
Yeah.
You need to have that contemplation as to what that's going to look like for you as you head into that period. And all of these periods take planning. So managing your expectations as to what what are you thinking is going to happen after the show? What do you want to do after the show? How do you think you're going to feel? Is there relationships you need to rebuild? There's so many things to think about after a show.
Yeah, and actually you've hit one there, relationships, like your relationships. If you're in a relationship with a partner who understands bodybuilding, you're going to find it quite, I would say, easier perhaps. If you're in a relationship with somebody who maybe who supports you with what you're doing, but maybe isn't as into it, you have to appreciate that, like, they're going through this with you, and them not maybe having a meal with you or doing anything different for such a long time. Towards the end, it's going to get tedious for them. It's going to get pretty hard. Like, so there is going to be management of your relationship as well. Sure. That's massive. I mean, we've both been there.
Yeah, we've both come away from relationships after preps and what have you. And I think definitely the further into doing more and more preps, you sort of get that reasoning in your own mind as to, it's prep brain, but it's not prep brain like when you do your first couple of preps. That's like next level prep brain where you're literally neurotic a lot of the time. And you just don't know what, there's so many behaviors you see backstage. It's just mental. And especially with the food side of things, I find expectation wise that people making comments during a prep from my first few seasons and saying, but you're not eating, you're not allowed that, you're not allowed that. When I'd competed, I wanted to eat those foods to prove those people wrong. Not because I even wanted the foods. And now I'm like, what was I even doing? Like, it was external pressures to eat certain foods that I don't even like that led me to eating those foods. And then when you compete and you have a meal after your show, you think the next day you're going to wake up and you're going to like go and hit the gym for hours because you've had one meal.
Yeah, I know. People don't realize, like, the food is never as good as you think it is. And, food never disappears. It's a funny thing, because of the restrictiveness of contest prep, people often start to kind of, just really kind of become very food focused on what they're to have post-show. And it's never as good as it seems. It can get out of control quite quickly if you're of that kind of personality. But it's also, it starts to breed, because you've been so institutionalized for such a long time and you've told your body to do certain things for such a long time, you're starting to like introduce these feelings of guilt and compensation, like what you just said there, where, I better go and run this off or do something about this. And that's a really unhealthy place to be. So having sitting down and clearly saying, like, what do I want to see from myself post show is really, really important. Like, I want to see an element of discipline still continued until I'm ready to come away from the restrictiveness. Like, I want to see me nourish myself with good foods, but allow myself little bits of treat because I've worked really hard and I really would like to enjoy that, but not to the extent where I'm going to make myself feel uncomfortable. So like actually like planting these seeds of what I'm going to do afterwards as a pact to yourself. And you can do this with a coach as well. I do this with a lot of my guys pre coming off stage. Is how we're going to manage the off show period, because that's important. It will really, really help you quite a lot for a person at that point to dig a little bit deep and have some self-control. And you learn a lot about yourself at that point. So
it doesn't matter how seasoned you are either. Like, I still have it. Sometimes I'm verging on full and I'm like, I'm just gonna have another half a chocolate bar just because I'm enjoying the taste of it, and I've just come out the back of a prep and now I can see it for what it is, rather than, okay, so that's about 6 grams of fat if I have half of that. And 20 grams of carbs. Okay, how many carbs have I had today? I'm really working on trying to come away from seeing food as a macro. It's so common in our sport to have that association with food, you know, not being able to completely just choose what you want to have and have it when you want to have it. You know, it doesn't have to be 3 to 5 hours apart, or you know, all those things that you do need to do in a prep. And I mentioned to you before we came on, my trickiest time until the most recent one is Christmas.
Yes. Yeah. With having all the options.
The food is like, I mean, I now speaking with people and stuff, I don't even really have like a breakfast. I have like a protein shake and then eat for the rest of the day. But some people have like a fry up as well. I'm like, how do you fit it all in?
Get it all in. I know. I get it. I totally understand where you're at. I mean, everyone's like so different. I think, you know, it's like everyone has a thing, don't they? Some people love to be foodies and they like to focus on food. And I'd say like that's probably your person that's more going to have a more hard time of it. Also, emotional eating is a big one. So, you know, when you're dealing with a lot of stuff maybe going on in your life, some people just reach for the food, and that's a huge component of why some people kind of roll off post-show and stuff.
It makes you feel good, doesn't it? That's what I find.
Good. Well, there's two things going on there. Like, it makes you feel good, but also like body at that point, if you're lean enough, that we've spoken about this before, you have ghrelin effect. So the body is the hormones in your body are telling your body you must eat to survive. That's physically what's happening. It's saying, please, we need the energy stores to function better. We need to get hormones back to balance. We need to regenerate. We need to put some body fat on to protect you. You need to be able to run faster for fight and flight. It's telling you all these sorts of things to get your body to a place where you are optimal again. And so when you start to eat, the body is like, it's literally brain sparks and fire in your whole chemistry is going, more please, more please, more please, more please. And before you know, if you have not got the self-control or haven't got the tools there yet in place, you will just subconsciously grab. And that can be very, very, very scary for some
physically and mentally damaging.
Yeah, and scary as well. Like I've seen a couple of clients be like, Steff, what the hell's happening to me? Why can't I, what the hell's happening to me? And it's
why can't I keep eating?
Yeah, it's obviously that you need to look out for as well. So what I'd say to the listeners on this is, if you are somebody that knows that they are particularly food focused, and be honest with yourself, guys, don't hide this, because your body and your mind will tell you, oh, it's not that big of a problem. It is. If you're somebody that is stalking pictures of food, putting foods in your cupboards, thinking about food, maybe, 20 hours of the day, waking up thinking about food, going to bed thinking about food, considering what you're going to have for the weeks after show, you are somebody that needs to consider that this might be a problem that is waiting to happen. Yeah. And I would be saying to you, you need to speak to somebody about managing that post-show so that that does not take you down a path where you're going to have a lot to undo. Yeah. And I always have to be very, very honest and quite kind of hard about it, because like everything, some people have self-control for some things, but not in others. And you want to protect somebody, if you can, from going down a negative feedback loop, particularly around food, because what you do is very hard to undo. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, from the physical point of view, but also the mental side of things, I can speak from experience. Like, it literally fucks your head up. Like,
Totally.
and if you're not around the right people, that even if, you know, they're not bodybuilders and whatever, you know, say it's family, if you can offer a level of transparency and they have got that desire to understand, it really does bloody help.
Oh my God, amazingly. You know, find people who will support you through the tougher times, because you know what? I know some coaches as well that will not hang around to deal with that difficulty.
I've heard of it as well.
That's not on in my eyes. Like,
why would you not be with someone to help them recover?
because it, and I'll be honest here from a coach's perspective, it demands more time, experience, and a level of duty and ethical care to a client that a lot of people were not willing to give. And that's honest. I'm being honest with that, because I've seen some clients be completely dropped post-show, come over to me and say, you know, I've got literally no clue what I'm doing. I've not heard from my coach from this, etc. And that is just, in my eyes, just, that's the problem with the industry I don't like, but we will go down that route.
It hurts the soul though, doesn't it? Because, you know, after a show, Christ almighty, you really do visit some very, very dark places at times.
Yeah, you do. And it's like anything, like when you've been shooting for a goal for so long, there's got to be a slow and subtle reverse out to help you regain back decision-making control around things, and then be able to set new goals. And again, this whole purpose of this topic, which is good expectations of being kind to yourself, knowing that there are going to be challenges in both the pre-prep, during prep, pre-bodybuilding, during bodybuilding, post-prep. There's going to be good days, there's going to be negative days, there's going to be challenges you'll face that are going to be rock solid to deal with, and that's where your resilience will come in, your self-discipline will come in at all stages of this. And I'd say the biggest bit, if I come back to sort of what I said at the very start, which is, this is a journey, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a journey. You'll learn a hell of a ton of about your, you know, of stuff about yourself. You'll meet yourself on great days, but you're going to meet some pretty dark parts of yourself as well, and they're icky and you won't want to face them. But that's what will make a good bodybuilder at the end of the day, is if you've got the resilience to get through the tough stuff as well as the good stuff. Yeah,
I do think as well, I guess a parting bit of advice for me would be keep an open mind.
Yeah, really good advice.
Yeah, do your best. You know,
have fun. We always talk about this. Like, don't take it so seriously. Like, it's a goal. It's a fun goal. Like, it's something that you own this, right, guys? Like, your body is your own. You own it. You can do what you want with it. You don't have to be that person on the screen. You don't have to be, you know, the person your mum wants you to be, or whoever else is around. You have this body, and if you want to go and enjoy a goal that's, you know, going to take you into the realms of competing, bodybuilding, doing something that's going to channel your energy, then that's your choice, and enjoy the journey. Don't hate on yourself so much, I think, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
It's so cool being a bodybuilder. Like, I legit love it. It's just the coolest thing ever. Like, there's so much you can learn about yourself. There's so many relationships you can, you know, nourish and connect with people that are just on your wave. And it's just so cool. And it's remembering that, you know, the tough times, the easier times, all of it comes into self-development and learning more about, you know, what you can achieve with your physique, but also mentally.
100%. I think there's one thing I wanted to say as well is, and I wondered if you wanted to talk about this, Sarah, but when you don't win, or when you don't, you know, when you don't get a result the first time you compete, which is very common, this happens all the time, is being okay with that, because you've got something to work with, you've got somewhere to go from. You're not always going to win your first show. And I think there's a lot of like misconception, because you see online all the time, you know, everyone winning all the time, because that's the people you follow. Nobody's following losers. Well, it's a really horrible thing to say, but nobody is following the people who take place. And that's a shame, because actually you can learn a hell of a ton from those people, because actually one day you'll see that person you didn't really follow, who you kind of remember, but didn't really place, and then suddenly they're like winning one day. Like,
an IFBB pro, hey.
Yeah, hey, like, oh look, they've been drafting for the last 6 years, like doing their thing. staying focused, staying consistent. And you know what? Actually, that's what 90% of people are doing. The small percentage of people you're following are the winners and the ones that are all fantastic, because they are the ones that are winning and are all fantastic at that time. But what people don't see is that so many, and a much larger proportion of people than you realize, are coming back year after year after year, and they're bringing more and more and more and more. And they're doing what we're talking about here, which is the journey. And it's really, really like, you need to stay grounded. It's not all about just a win. It's about a journey. And people, if you really want to do this and come back and keep progressing, you'll understand that, and you'll get there one day. But yeah, I think, again, just some kind of open air ramblings about, don't be disheartened if you take a loss every now and again. It's part of it.
Yeah, because it's from competing for, you know, a few seasons and never placing, that was what built my character as a competitor. But also when I got that first win, I cannot fucking tell you, like, it was literally like I was on drugs. Every moment of those like first 3 or 4 years that went into preps off season, just literally going and going and going and going. When I first won a show, it was literally floored me. I like fell to the floor, and they were like, as you can see, this girl, it seems to mean a lot to her. And it was like, yeah. And then also off the back of that, then my most recent show coming fourth, so not getting the top 3 placing that I would have hoped for, you know, that was on paper, that was difficult and would have been difficult. So going in from being a pro in several different federations to go back into the amateur division, they're looking for different things to then come off the back of that. And I've now got some feedback, which has been really helpful to actually go, okay, I know what I need to do. So if I compete in a different division again, and I can look back on that and take it for what it is. But because I competed with my best friend and she actually won our category, I can't tell you how much my heart wanted to burst with pure elation to watch her win her first show, because I could then look back and feel what it felt like to win my first show. And all of that like hype to place and to win like literally disappeared. And I was like, oh my God, she just won her first show. And I was so happy. And through my own, you know, through different personal experiences at the moment and getting divorced and, you know, some stuff going on, I wasn't able to compete at my, what I'd say 100%. So also another lesson I've learned from my most recent show is that actually I went in knowing that I wouldn't be 100%, and I'll never do that again. There's no way I personally want to go in and compete again unless I'm absolutely, you know, where I want to be and on point and ready to compete at the highest level I can. So there's so many things you can learn from not placing. And, you know, I could easily think, oh, well, I've taken a back step, but actually I've learned some really big lessons. And also I had a conversation with Stephen a couple of weeks out from the show, and he said, we've come away from the show, you know, pull out, you're going through a massive life change, or you compete, we get you to the show, because it was a case of getting me to the show. I wasn't in a you know, the best place, and you probably won't get the podium finish you're used to because you're not 100%. And I was like, do you know what, I want to compete with my best friend. If I don't place, I don't place. I'll learn from it. Next year I'll come back stronger. And this is exactly what we're saying about the bodybuilding journey. There's so much to it, isn't there? It's like,
and you've just hit like another big massive thing there, which is, you know, if you're somebody who has got giant life changes going on around you, moving house, getting a new job, going through a relationship breakup, having a kid, doing, I don't know, Mount Kilimanjaro in 2 months' time, like, I don't know what it is. If you're doing something that is going to take a ton of emotional energy, is going to mean a lot of change and shifting around, could potentially throw up other issues and things that are going on, trust me, it's probably not the right time to do prep at that point. It's probably not. And this is something I maybe should have said earlier as well, but see, at the very beginning of your prep, I always ask the question, are there any huge challenges that you foresee in the near future that could be a stumbling block to you not achieving this goal.
Yeah.
And if somebody might say something, and I've had all kinds, you expect sometimes people to be like, no, nothing at all. But honestly, some people will say to me, oh yeah, I had one last week actually. Yeah, I've got an operation on my right knee in about 3.5 weeks time. I should be recovered about 6.5 weeks after that. The doctor's saying I should go into recovery. And I was like, right, no, we can't go into a prep with that scenario. That is exactly one of those situations that I'm talking about. Like, and I'm the same as you, Sarah. I've been through a couple of hella transitional points where I've been a prep, and because of the scenario, physique might not look its best. It's not as fresh. Yeah. You're not able to apply the same things to it. Not only that, the cognitive stress that might be going on in your world at that current point is so overwhelming that you might be using prep for the wrong reason at that point as well.
100%.
There's tons there. So an expectation again, coming back to that is, do you have a pretty set life? Like, are things going all right at the moment? Are they pretty balanced out, apart from every day, the normal day-to-day stressors? Yeah. Is there anything massive going on? And if there is, consider your timing properly. If there's not, then that's probably a good time to do a prep.
Yeah. And managing expectations as to what your body, like you just touched on there. Yeah. So 4 weeks out, when I made the decision that I did want to split up with Kieran and we were going to get divorced, overnight I put on 2.5 kilos, and it was like my calves and ankles had elephantitis. It was such an out of body experience. So I actually felt mentally ready to do that, and the decision of getting divorced. So mentally I'm like, I'm cool, I'm fine. And I'm looking at my calves thinking, what the hell is going on? I've literally never had anything like this in my whole life. And we're talking 4 weeks out, gaining 2.5 kilos. Holy shit. And you don't realize with these stresses and big life changes, what your emotional state is going to then do to your body, or vice versa. Yeah, you can't foresee that. So definitely, like you say, obviously if something comes up and you didn't know it was going to, which is sort of, if I look back, I knew it was coming, but I wasn't accepting it till, say 4 weeks out from the show. But if there's underlying problems and things that are going to potentially come up during a prep, take ownership for it if you can. Be transparent with your coach. And is it the right time for you to compete?
100%. And it's funny because, like, we've all just been through COVID. Yeah. Like we're like the whole year we went into a lockdown. And effectively, that's kind of one of those situations we're talking about. Interestingly, because of a scenario like that, where the whole entire country, the whole world came to a standstill, you had to throw yourself into acceptance that was the way it was going to be. And so for prep wise, people just adapted very quickly, and it was a very different kind of thing. But one of the lessons like I took out of that was actually that we were forced into that situation, right? And we all had to adapt and overcome. The situations that we're talking about here, they're very stressful. But there is an element of that, what you give power to is going to have ownership over you. And some things you're not going to be able to stop at all. Of course not. Going through a divorce is not an easy thing if anyone's been there.
And it's not always, you don't always foresee it, do you? There's in relationships, you make reasons to keep going, especially if you're, married and whatever. And like you sort of said earlier about prep, didn't you? Using it for the wrong reasons, and could be with COVID as well, a coping mechanism.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think my team, like my 2020 team, who competed the end of 2020, did a whole year of prep indoors with everything they had, which
distance bands.
we just all channeled in together as a tribe. Like, it was pro prep. Like, we were on it. Like, screw COVID. This is what was going to happen. It was interesting, and I suppose there is a wee element of that's what I'm saying to your struggles in life. You can see things as in adversity you survive and you go for it, or in adversity you have to take realistic stock and go, I can't do all of this right now. And that's so it's tact.
It's such, the way you've just summarized it is perfect, because it is so true. Like, that's exactly the position I found myself in. It was like I've done my prep to the absolute letter, and I wanted to be resilient and compete and go against adversity and compete and potentially win and whatever else. But my body was like, no,
nope.
no. You've done everything to the letter, but I'm just going to piss you off. And it was actually, it's hard to even accept it, but it was out of my control.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. 100%.
That's so hard though, isn't it? It's hard to accept it because you're like, this is just really shit.
You feel like you're letting yourself down, but you're not. You're actually being smart. And there's a sense of like, it's a funny thing. It's like a subconscious energy that you feel like you're letting the world down almost. Like I'm letting my environment down because I'm giving up on this, where it's not. It's realizing sometimes you have to take a step back to move forward. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Sometimes you have to stop, get out of the environment and look in. And then you go, okay, I can't work out what's going to be the best thing for me or actually get the success I want unless I stop and just pull myself away from the scenario. And that might hurt a little bit and it might be painful and icky, but that's where I'm going to grow and I'm going to come back, like you say. And it may mean a little bit of short-term pain for a long-term reward.
Yeah, because that making that decision to still compete a couple of weeks out when, you know, Stephen was like, I'm not prepared to put you into the ground and, you know, make you do loads of cardio and like to lose water retention that's caused by stress and a massive life change. He's like, I'm not doing it to you. So we either don't get as lean as maybe you'd like to and consider that you're not going to place, and you do it for the experience. You do compete with your friends, your family were going to be there because it was a local show and stuff like that. I made that call to do it. On reflection, I could have pulled out because I wouldn't want to compete at not my best again, but I've learned that now, and that's why I think I can move forward objectively next year, hopefully get settled in a new environment, find myself, and then get absolutely shredded. Like I cannot wait. I'm like, this is just gonna be so good. Like I just want to come in. It's just and now I've got some actual constructive feedback, and it was exactly what Stephen and I decided as to why I didn't place. It was like, okay, I can box that off now.
Yeah, totally.
I'm moving forward. I don't even really need to grow too much for my category. I want to put on a bit of muscle so that when I prep again, I can look good. And I've got, there's a plan in place, and I'm like, yes. So what you said there, just people that do go through these things that maybe get thrown on them, you never know. I've had a family member being diagnosed with a terminal condition when I'm in a prep, things like that you don't foresee. Make the decision that's right for you, 100%. What sits well. And also having a quality coach, he wasn't prepared to batter me for the sake of me trying to get a place in, and I may not have even got a place in because the body might have just literally gone no.
Yeah, so, and no amount. Like I've heard of some coaches, right, we'll throw in low level water loss tablets for trying to manipulate with yohimbe or
fat burner,
other agents that I've seen just to regulate the water in the body. And I just cringe so badly. I'm like, no. Like the body is saying something to you and it might not be ready at that point. Don't force it. Don't push it. Pull back, go for a later show or reassess. Think about where you're at. Because if your body is doing any crazy things due to any like anything, cortisol levels, manipulations in diet, changes in circumstances, whatever it is, the coach has to be realistic and not put your body in further stress and further inflammation and all of that to just for the sake of trying to get a trophy at that particular point, But there's so much there we could talk about as well.
And it's nice to share it because I think like when we started our female competitor series, it was about airing things that people don't talk about, and I can't imagine many people would talk about stuff like this on this level, but it is with a view of helping people that do go through massive changes and managing expectations in general. In life is hard at times, and that's okay. It's I don't really, I find it hard to accept the saying that you're not okay and that's okay, because it's pushed around so much now. It's made it a little bit gimmicky in the nicest way possible, but it is cool to ride out the shit times. Like
it is, and life is not linear. It's never perfect. It's always a work in progress. And when people start to accept that, and they think, well, you know, that you're never going to have the perfect scenario of your life that you maybe have got in your mind, and that's a pressure in itself. You just do your best every day and do the things you enjoy and set realistic expectations. And if you don't know where to begin, find somebody who is an expert in that place and help you set the expectations as well. Because a lot of the times, you know, people that come and work with me, it's the first thing I'll hear is, I don't know where to begin. I need advice. I need help. And that's the beginning of setting the understanding of what they're about to begin. And I think there's something pretty magical about that at the start. And if you find and land yourself with people who really genuinely want to see you do well, you're gonna be onto a winner from the get-go. So
I love that as well. Like, the best clients for me are the ones that say, you're the professional, this is what I want to do, can you tell me how to do it? I'm like, yes, I can.
Hell yeah, I can. I'll tell you what not to do.
Not the people that are like, oh, well, I've heard this and she does it. No. I'm either going to coach you to what I know, my experience, whatever, or you're going to coach yourself or find someone that you can, you know, play ego games with. Because it's not, you know, I don't want to do that. I want to share my experience with you to help you get to your best. And that is
100%. Yeah. And sometimes you have to talk about leaving last experiences at the door. You need to kind of put a full stop on previous experience, because guaranteed what you're going to achieve now is on another, it's a different level. It's a different experience. It's a different set. The whole thing is going to be so different. So to start pitching it against something previous, you're actually stunting the progress, because you've still got this perception that that's all you know. Whereas and it comes back to exactly what you said, Sarah, which is you've got to be open-minded. You've got to start an open book. Day one, fresh page, new approach. Where am I going with this? Why am I doing this? Why am I maybe enlisting the help of X person? What have they got that together with my hard work and my learning and discipline are they going to bring to the table as well to help me get to where I want to be? And that's the perfect match right there.
And someone to aspire to. I think it's really nice when, you know, I work with people and they're like, I've watched you do your whole bodybuilding journey and you really inspire me. I'm so like, that's just so nice to hear for a start, for the right reasons, but it also, you're respecting your coach. And for me, that's, you know, massive.
It is, because as well, when you respect your coach will give you more. So if you get a genuine feel from a client, you get a genuine feel that they just value what you are doing together. And when you get that sense and connection with a client, I'll give everything. Like I would give everything. You do get the clients as well who, you know, are kind of working it out and thinking, is this the right thing here or there? And sometimes you have to step in and go, you know, like, do you trust what I'm saying to you? Because you have to find a linear, like a good balance between client and coach, because at the end of the day, client is paying for service and they need to get something out of it. But equally, the coach needs to feel that the client is understanding and believing in what they're saying and doing as well. So there's like that kind of that line there. It's all about relationship, all about that.
It's just so nice when you can forge those relationships. You know, pretty much all of my clients, I always say to them, we're going to be together for at least a year. What, you know, my expectation of what I'd like to be able to give you the fundamentals, but you know, 60-70% of my client base are people that have been with me for more than 5 years. Exactly, and I see them like twice a week. There's a lot of volume, but we just vibe so well, and it's so like just seeing them achieve is like, this is just the best. Like, it's so good.
And it is 100%.
And for you being a coach, it's like, and also, you know, for us coaching people and delving into different things, for you nourishing, like you've got your show coming up, all of these things that we can then offer more experience with, especially for you competing and competitors and what goes into a show, judging criteria, all the things that we can evolve with as coaches as we go down our journey in that regard as well. We're all working together to rise each other up, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've ever since I can remember, like even before starting this journey, like something I'm an extremely passionate person. When I get into something, I want to provide other people the level of professionalism, fairness, passion that I genuinely feel about something. And essentially that's like why I jumped at the chance when we got offered it to take on the affiliation for WNBF UK, to come 360 and to be able to now lead a federation that genuinely gives athletes a professional platform to get to the best, well, to get to the elite, world natural bodybuilding stage. For me, where I start was one day I might quite like to get there. Now I'm able to actually give people the opportunity to get there. I mean, I've got like goosebumps thinking about it, because genuinely just the amount of my passion's always been performance and health, fitness, wellness, but just generally giving, like I'm a performer in my background. That's where I've come from. But I've learned so much about myself in growing in my confidence and psychologically, where I can apply that and help other people. And helping people do that is just like, it's more than anything I've achieved myself ever. So 31st on the WNBF UK stage, I'm telling you right now, the amount I put into this is insane, but it's going to be something pretty special as a professional, which I'm very excited about. Yeah. So if anybody has not gone and checked that out, you have to get on that.
And even for people, like I've met a couple of people, mainly through Instagram, even if you want to just come and watch a show and you've never competed before, come and get involved. Just get a spectator ticket. I'd 100% recommend watching shows, get in the vibe, understand what people look like, start looking at your category, just get the understanding of what bodybuilding is, and then you can understand whether you actually want to do that. So we're both going to be there. There's a big
Sarah
team.
is one of our judges. So Sarah, WNBF UK judge, we've been through the judges workshop already, and obviously we've got a whole ton of interesting professionals, a lot of professional judges there who are pros from other federations and pros in WNBF as well. And for those of you who are considering bodybuilding, maybe at the start of your journey, the natural stages are a wonderful place to begin. Certainly WNBF is somewhere we all like to try and achieve the status we want. So it's great. Please go and check it out. Give us some support.
So because you've got your Instagram page as well, haven't you, for that? And then on the website. Yeah,
WNBF_UK Instagram, or WNBFUK.com.
Yeah. So give it a follow. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's session, make sure we share it on the stories, tell people about it, and just share the love, in essence.
Yes, and give us some topics, guys. Like, honestly, you know us by now. We'll delve into anything and everything. So we'd love to hear from you. So Sarah, where can we find you?
So Instagram's my best, Sarah Parker Hatchard, and Steff
Noble Figure Pro.
Perfecto. And
I can say it now. I think it's taken me about 20 episodes just to get to that.
We got there.
No.
And of course, just reach out to us if you've got, like Steff said, any topic suggestions or anything you want us to cover. We are all ears.
Yes. So rounding up, expectations, if you haven't already done so, write down what they are, the different stages, and if you are not sure where to begin, please reach out, because of course both of us have a lot of experience and I help a lot of people coach with that as well. So I'd love to hear from people. So thank you very much, Sarah, for having me on again.
You too, and we look forward to next session.
Peace out, yo.
Peace out, A-Town.